And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. Well, that was a new swipe, and I was not ready for it. I just got a new computer, so everything's a little bit different. But we are a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. My name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP. And if audio or anything isn't quite right, please let me know, because this is the first stream on a new setup, which means I gotta reset everything up and figure things out. But on Stonetop Eve, we are sitting down with Jeremy. Stonetop, the eve before all the children's Stonetops start to come to them. Jeremy, that's what Stonetop Eve is. Because the books are arriving tomorrow morning at the warehouse and beginning to ship out to everyone. But we are going to sit down and talk a little bit about prep, how we do prep in Stonetop, what the role of prep in Stonetop, how Jeremy specifically did prep for the 4-part actual play we did here on stream, using that as a worked example. I'm super excited to do it. Jeremy, for if people haven't heard of Stonetop and have found their way here to the stream, why don't you tell them a little about who you are, what you do, and give us the elevator pitch for Stonetop.
Sure thing, Tony. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I am, I guess, a game designer, and I made Stonetop, and Stonetop is the pitch is it is a hearth fantasy role-playing game set in an Iron Age that never was. So, powered by the apocalypse, fantasy game, very much descended from Dungeon World, but it is primarily focused on the heroes of a small, isolated Iron Age village that is surrounded by wilderness and danger, and the PC's primary role is being the heroes of that village and going out and protecting it from threats, seeking opportunities, and otherwise just being the people that local folks turn to get stuff done. But it follows very much a cycle of play of you start in the village, you see what's going on, you get a touch of day-to-day life, and then something happens, draws the PCs out, they go on an adventure, and then we follow their return home and actually play out some meaningful interactions there.
Awesome. Yeah, and we did both the session 0 and the starting adventure, and I just kind of walk through that. I said this to you before we went live, and I was like, man, I can't wait to talk about this. I've been excited to dive into it with you. Like, there were so many questions I wanted to ask while we were playing about how you were adjudicating things, how things came together, how the prep went, and it was really hard to not just want to talk about it all then. And so today I was like, I'm going to go reread the prep section in order to prep tonight. I was like, I wonder what Jeremy's going to say. And then, of course, like I always do whenever we have a conversation, I'm like, oh, all these great things that Jeremy already wrote down in this book. Like, you have already done such a great job of describing the process of prep and carrying people generally through it, but also in that first adventure, there's so much direct support. So I know we're going to be spending a lot of time just like in the text. And I'm really excited to kind of have you break down for us what you did for this specific one. I also think it was really funny that when we were talking about this one, you were like, I didn't really prep that much. It was all y'all. And then Luke specifically was like, I don't know, you sent me a pretty great prep document with some good words written down on it before that. So I'm super excited about that. Before we dive into that, a couple of things I want to shout out. The whole Stonetop team is going to be at Gen Con. So if folks are coming to Gen Con, we're really excited to have Jeremy and Jason and Lucy all there for that. So if you have a copy of the game and want to bring it to get signed, that's great. If you already have the copy of the game and you don't want to bring it and you still want to get it signed, we're actually going to be doing it bookplate style. So that way people don't have to unseal their books when they get them or bring them with them, but can still have a signed copy of the game when they come. We're hoping to have a slate of things at Gen Con, games and other stuff like that we're still working on and we'll be announcing more about soon, but we're really looking forward to being able to actually like meet in person and a whole bunch of other things too. So really excited about all that. And then in non-Stonetop business, if you have not checked out Soothe Wardens yet. It's by Navarre Jackson. It's in its last 48 hours. It's not quite funded yet. We're less than $1,000 from funding. It's a really great game that's inspired by the Aes Sedai style adventures from Wheel of Time. Really cool stuff. Head on over to ttrpg.link/Soothe Wardens over on BackerKit to check that out. Would really love to get that project across the funding goal. Oh man, Jeremy, your cough has transmitted through the screen all the way to me. But
It's
with that said,
viral.
do what?
It's viral.
It's viral. We're going viral. But yeah, super excited to really just kind of dive in and get started. So, like I said, it's laid out really well in the book. Do you want to switch to sharing your screen right away? Dive in pretty quick. Let's go ahead and do that whenever you're ready. You hit the thing and I'll hit the thing. All right.
I hit the thing, Tony.
We're mostly where we're supposed to be. I'll fix this while you take on. So yeah, let's start talking about prep. By the way, if y'all have questions about the prep processes we're going through, flag them out. It's really helpful for me if you type question at the beginning so that it highlights it a little bit more for me in the fact that it is a question. But if it seems like something we'll cover naturally, I'll kind of leave them and just kind of sprinkle them through as we go. So good. Luke is in the chat to keep you honest, and that's good to know. So.
It's generally a good idea to have Luke and or Hobbs around to keep me honest.
Yeah. So.
All right. I mean, so do you just want me to just like start with the process or
Yeah, I think giving an overview of the process, and I think just stopping as we go through to talk a little bit about, okay, here is the process as it's outlined in the book. What did you do for our Troubles Abound session?
Sure. So even before we get to prep, I guess I just want to talk about the fact that Stonetop has a very established and procedural session 0. So it's like this whole getting started chapter is meant to walk you through, okay, like what do you do before the session? And then what do you do during your first session 0? So you actually, like we review the setting overview, we set expectations, we establish tone and content. People make their characters, and then there's a big chunk of time set aside for introducing the PCs. So in the back of every playbook, there's a column that kind of walks through, all right, step 1, introduce your character by their playbook, by their name, their background, their like where they're from, their origins, etc. And then part of that is then everybody asking questions, and the getting started chapter includes questions for the GM for each of the playbooks and each of their backgrounds. So you don't, as a rule, I found that I don't end up asking all of these for every one of the playbooks and backgrounds, but they're all here to give you kind of a nudge of the types of things you are likely to want to ask about. And some of them tie back specifically to questions that like are posed by the playbook, by the background. It's like if you are a blessed vessel, then one of the questions, or that's at least implied by that, is like, did this happen all at once? Did like how do you see yourself? And so a lot of the questions that come in here or that are listed here are just sort of meant to riff on those questions or those obvious connections. And there's, like there's a bunch of these for each of the playbooks, each of the backgrounds. And that actually means that first round can end up taking a substantial amount of time. Because we figured out right off the bat, like, okay, the judge came from Marsh Edge and is a missionary, and like, Nathan already had a fairly like coherent picture of what he wanted that character to look like. But with like Owena, Darby, we were kind of just figuring it out together as we went with Darby. So these really start to just gel the character in people's brains. And as we were doing this and getting into like the special possessions, which is the next round, and how you earn your keep, and then every playbook gets their own world building questions that they are kind of world building prompts that they then share. And again, there's more questions for each of the player characters and for each of the playbooks and those things. And as all of that's happening, I basically was taking notes here. So, just these are the things that everybody said that they were interested in right at the bat. And then I basically just have a little section for each of the characters, each of the players, right? You can see me just writing down like the name, pronouns, the background that they took, and the playbook in the background they took, what they were well versed in, um, the look, all of that stuff. And then eventually we get, like here, this is where we start to establish that story of Owen who disappeared and vanished in the woods.
Yeah.
So
And
just taking notes of this stuff as we go.
and I know
Oh
people
yeah,
are
go
going to
ahead, Tony.
ask, what are you
Yeah.
taking notes in? Like, is this Google
Oh sure.
slide?
This is just one note.
It's one note. Cool.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just a man, I don't remember when I started using it. I think we started using it at my day job, and it just was a tool that I was familiar with. So I think at one point it came with the Microsoft Office suite, and so I just started using it, and I've been using it for 20 years now. So it's just any kind of a note taking device is going to
Whatever
work.
makes sense for your brain is going to help you
Exactly.
as a keeper.
Yeah. And some people prefer to do it handwritten. I've just gotten used to doing it digitally because then I can find it, copy paste, just insert things wherever I need to go. So like as we did that introductions, I was just taking up a lot of notes as we went. So for each of the players, you can see here that I've got who the character is, notes on their background, their special possessions, their world building questions. And we ended up not doing the full, like, as often happens if you're not careful, the session zero can require time afterwards to do like the NPC connections, the PC to PC connections.
We're going viral.
Yeah, exactly.
What you need is a couple different handkerchiefs, and just make sure there are different colors on the inside of one of them. Some black, some red, whatever you want. Just so
I
you
was
can
just
show
thinking
this
I
to
need
the
some that have little red strut spots on them so
just so
that
you can say, "Oh, that's weird."
what were those? It's fine. So anyhow, taking a bunch of notes, and then we ultimately end the session with you end the session zero. What just happened? Okay, you end session zero with a season's change roll. Karna, the most hopeful of the party, rolled for season's change, which is one of the kind of core what happens this season moves in Stonetop. And Val rolled a 5, and there's a +1 for the steady starting fortunes. That's still a 6, which means threats abound. And that basically means we're going to start the whole first adventure and the first season with trouble. All right, so that's like kind of what happened during session zero, and that's all prelude to what you actually do in the first adventure.
Awesome.
From there, go ahead,
Real
Tony.
quick, couple questions from audience that are this good time. Somebody asked a really great question, which is simply, how long should someone expect session zero to run in a range? Like, I know we did it for 4 hours and still had some left, and so I'm gonna guess that's somewhat indicative. But what do you see as kind of the standard range people should plan around?
It seems to be that about an hour plus an hour per player is about right.
Okay.
So like I think we would have been good if we did 5 hours, but we really only had about 4. Because we were close to the end on those.
Yeah.
And you can, there's places that you can trim, and there's also going to be a fair amount of variation from group to group based off of just, how chit chatty everybody is. Like when Luke and Hobbs and Kat and I did the Blinding Light session zero, and for anyone that's not familiar, we did an official annotated actual play as part of the Kickstarter. where we just recorded some sessions, and one of the players, Hobbs, spent a inordinate amount of time editing it down for watchability and then adding like pop-ups for these are the GM moves, this is the core loop of the game, this is the rules that the players are engaging with, and just added all of that in to make like this 6 session run be a like a tutorial for the game. Which, by the way, like I highly recommend that. It was a ton of work, but I also am really proud of what
Yeah,
came out of
it's
that.
it's excellent.
Um, but like the three of them and me, you get the four of us together, and we're just gonna chit chat and like talk hypotheticals and chew the scenery forever. So we take for freaking ever to get anything done. And I think we did our session zero for like 5 hours with only 3 players, and then we still had homework to do. So, but that was us, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. We didn't have anything else to do. It was a thing.
And then
Um,
this wasn't asked as a question, but
yeah.
it's an observation that just got made, and I think it's a good thing to call out. Sugarfin over on Twitch said, "My players ended up making so many NPCs that I was kind of overwhelmed trying to remember them all and have a good amount appear in session one."
Mhm.
Is there a range of NPCs that you like see as kind of like what's helpful versus maybe what's too many?
I don't worry about what's too many because you don't have to have them all come into play immediately. Um, but like the what did we do? I think we had 21 by the
21,
time I
23,
was
somewhere in
done.
that range. I think
Like we ended up starting
we ended up
play.
with 23 when we added the twins, I think, after
Right,
the fact.
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, and so uh I think that's fine to have like a large number. Just understand that not all of them need to be fleshed out. And also, a lot of them are going to be more in the background and not necessarily characters that are going to come into play, or even necessarily characters that are still alive. Like, of those 23, we had an awful lot of missing, dead, presumed missing, like fucked off type of characters on that list.
Yeah.
So, like, I would say expect at least a dozen NPCs to get established. If you end up closer to 20 or over 20, you're not doing it wrong. You're just, some of them are going to necessarily be backburnered for a while.
And I also think if I remember right, like we also opened with basically adding 2 new whiskey brewing NPCs that I don't know existed on that list as part of session one because you asked
That-
Nathan a question and Nathan provided basically 2 new NPCs right off the rip. So like that
Yep.
is going to be a
Yep.
flexible and fluid reality as you go through.
Yeah. And one thing I can encourage people to do is while you're doing your introductions, it's a second tier type of skill, but it's a good skill to develop of getting people to riff on each other's
Mm.
NPCs. So, like, instead of necessarily introducing an entirely new NPC, pay attention to what has already been established and just riff on one of them and be like, oh, this character. Oh, well, how about I have this relationship with that character, or we'll be cousins, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Myard also does point out if you have more than 300 NPCs, you might need more housing in your village soon.
That
So
is true. I would say if you have more than 150, you probably have already gotten, yeah.
pretty close.
At that point, it's The Sims.
Awesome. So you're taking all this stuff in session zero. You're
Yep,
asking all these questions. You're making all these notes. And again, a lot of that's guided by what playbooks people choose and the actual process of session zero.
you got it. And then the kind of after the session, your job as the GM, at least what I think of my job as the GM, is to take all of that and think about it, right? Like organize your notes, consolidate it. One of the things that I pretty much always end up doing is creating a timeline. Um, just because for me it really helps to you get all these threads that have been introduced like, oh yeah, I lost my parents when I was young, or I just recently got to Stonetop, or we had this fight back, such and such. I'll try and get that information as we are doing the introductions, but sometimes you just need time to look at everything and put it in order. And I find that doing that helps make connections, and it helps you see what the actual story is, and it helps you identify contradictions. And just kind of think it through and be like, okay, what actually is the sequence of events here? And you can also anchor that to events that are kind of canon in the game, like the forest folk disappearing 10 years ago. So you kind of have to figure out, all right, well, where does this all land, but relative to that kind of important detail.
And I think it was
Um,
super helpful for all of us, also as players, to then see, oh, we threw out a bunch of ideas. There was some refinement, I think, even of that, like what was ONMI's age relationship to each other based on when things
yep.
disappear. Like it was helpful in really helping like concretize what had happened for all of us, because in this small village, while the exact time frame may not be clear, we would all most of the locals would have a general sense of all of these things. And so like there wasn't a time we had to really ask when did that happen, if we went through that timeline and it was established in there already.
You got it. And that also kind of just points out that the communication is ongoing after the session zero. It's not like you just shut up as the GM and, like I was sending you all messages like, hey, Tony, I noticed that you said that Vassal's family came here a couple generations ago from the south. And then Karna, we had like I hadn't even thought of it when we were doing introductions, but Karna said that the light bearer had moved to Stonetop from the south, and it was like, oh, well, there's an obvious connection. How about we say that Fossil is descended from the light bearer,
Yeah.
or and so like that
Or
kind of
yeah, people who
thing.
had come over with them, which that
Yeah,
came
yeah.
back up in the campfire scene, right? Like that was a moment of connection between the characters that
Mhm.
if that hadn't been proposed and established in that, wouldn't necessarily. I mean, maybe it would have coalesced either way, but it felt really natural in play because we had established this connection already.
Yep. And then that kind of doing that kind of reviewing your notes, consolidating, kind of figuring out what the story is, that helps to naturally suggest this part, which is identifying the threats, right? So, we had these established threats of like clearly something had taken Owain back in the day, and something had caused the judge to disappear mysteriously, and there were and something had caused the light bearer to disappear, so mysteriously. So especially given that we were just planning on doing a 4 session run, trying to consolidate as much of this as possible into like a single adventure that kind of touched all of the little points made sense. And when you've got people disappearing in the woods, well, I mean, that seems obvious that we're dealing with fake bullshit.
Yeah.
So like that was front of my mind, is like this is obviously going to be Faye stuff. Owena had telegraphed or Darby had telegraphed that she wanted Faye stuff by making that one of her areas of expertise. Um, and it just all fit right. So so I kind of knew even before the session was done that we were going to be dealing with Faye. And then as I was prepping things, it was really just like, okay, how much of this can I tie together? And and we had like 2 weeks between the session zero and the actual game session. So a lot of that time was spent working on the timeline and consolidating everything and just percolating in the back of my brain, like what exactly is this story?
And we were
um,
finishing up that last round or two of questions, but it was a lot of fun to have you like if somebody has that kind of gap, like if you're doing session zero a little bit beforehand, it was fun to have you consistently come into chat and ask more questions as you were doing your prep too. Like it was a little bit
yeah.
of like asynchronous play that we got to have to keep us all engaged and excited as we were leading up to the first adventure.
And it keeps everybody, keeps things fresh in everyone's minds. And like it just, yeah, there's nothing but good that comes out of that, as long as you're not expecting everyone to like reply within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So as that was happening, the other thing that I was kind of doing is not running the game, but the first adventure. So, like you were saying, Tony, right? Like the first adventure, there's a full chapter in the book on how do you put together your first adventure, and it specifically lays out your goals. Like, what are you trying to do with this first adventure? And then it gives you a structure of the first adventure, and then it gets into, okay, how do we actually put this thing together? And you said, you wanted to talk a little bit about philosophy of prep, right?
Yeah.
So Stonetop is probably one of the most prep heavy PBTA games that you're going to find,
I don't know
right?
that there's a probably about that. I think Stonetop is probably certainly the most prep heavy PBTA
It
you're
is,
gonna
yeah,
find.
yeah. It is almost certainly. I'm not going to say it's the most one heavy one, but you know, it's it's definitely up there.
Yeah.
It is the most prep heavy one that I am familiar with. Um, it but that doesn't mean that you have to spend an enormous amount of time prepping. Like we talk about this a bit in the running the game chapter, but I firmly believe that there are specific reasons why you prep, and those are just ones that you've got cool shit to say as like when you're put on the spot. But the other parts are you sometimes you just it takes time to do things right, and you want to speed up play and just be ready to go. So like if I was going to have a big map for some sort of complex scene, I'd want that drawn, or I'd want that kind of like made in advance. If I was going to write a move, like a custom move, and I want it, or a love letter, I'm going to need to write that in advance. I can't just make that stuff up on the fly. Having stats for monsters that we're going to need, right? Like you want to just have that stuff to facilitate the game. You can riff a lot of it if you need to, but you just prep to speed up play. And then probably the biggest one for me is honing your craft. Like the very first Stonetop game that I ran in playtest, like this kind of model of the game, I didn't actually do much prep at all. In fact, I don't think I did any prep. We and it was the classic start just outside of the village and or start in the village and the stat like ask a bunch of questions, and it was of course some child went missing in the woods, and one of the PCs feels obligated to go after them, and they gathered up their friends or their competent allies and went off in the woods after them. But I was largely just making that crap up as I went, but it didn't, and it worked, but it definitely didn't hold together thematically as tightly as I could have done. And we were, largely just making it up as we went, which is again, it's fine, but it felt a little like as we were starting it off. So this benefits, I think, the first adventure in particular because you have these specific goals and because there is a specific structure to it. It benefits to take some time and think it through, have some plans of moves you're going to make, scenes you think that would be good to frame, and just sort of like see where it goes from there. And so that kind of gets into the structure where the classic Stonetop first adventure, you start in the village, you get a picture of everybody's day-to-day lives, you get a little bit of conflict, right? But not like deep conflict, just, the standard day-to-day type of conflict
Yeah.
or the things that people just are dealing with. And then on that, you drop a hook, and that hook will then introduce the threat or introduce the opportunity of the adventure, and then from there you see how people react, and then that almost inevitably leads to people going out on an adventure, and then they eventually come home. All right, we good?
We're good. One more thing on kind of the session zero piece as we kind of transition, like as we move into the starter adventure. Sorry, because I want to make sure we hit it because I'll forget it otherwise. Meyer asked the question. The don't start in character play in session zero is stated really firmly. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And I think the reason it's a good time to bring it up is like you talked about that play testing experience. Is that something you learned in that process, or is that pretty early on defined as we're not doing a scene in character, we're not diving into that, we're gonna push that to the next part, or is that something that you came to early or
It
learned through play testing?
uh it's partly this right here. Um, so okay, there's this tradition in Apocalypse World, Monster Heart, Saga of the Icelanders, like a lot of the old like core PBTA games. Um, that you'd create your characters, you'd do your introductions, and that would be pretty quick, and then you'd immediately drop into play, follow them around on like a typical day, and find out where their conflicts were, and then you'd use that to kind of poke at what comes next. Right, that sort of sets up
Mm-hmm.
your conflicts for the next session, and you go off and you write threats or whatever it is, and come back with it. But one of the things that we found from the playtest groups, so this didn't happen to me, but I got this from a few of the playtest groups, is when they did that, and or when they just started the first session without a whole lot of guidance and a planned adventure hook, they ended up doing this. Uh, if you do that, you will soon PCs will soon have the blood of their fellow villagers on their hands, and that leads to a very different type of game, right? Um, and one of my favorite bits was a playtest group that came like it was kind of a second round of playtesting, and so the players actually gave feedback of, why did you push us out into the village? And then the GM showed them this column. And they're like, what kind of psychopaths would need this? And the answer was those players in an earlier round of playtesting. The same freaking ones.
Here's our nice cozy hearth fantasy game about the village you all are part of and care
Why
for.
did you murder your best friend? Right? And so there's that, right? You basically just don't want to you want a little bit of thought and structure to this so that you get those beats on the first adventure of establish the norm, identify like the relationships that the PCs have created for each other and what they think is important, and then introduce the adventure, right? And get them out of town before conflicts can actually boil up and become the core of the game. And then while they're on their adventure, well, now we got something to compare to. And like you see just how fragile life is and blah 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 blah. And you know, and then as they head back home, well, we can get back into that, but the characters are going to be kind of changed by that whole experience.
And their neighbor bloodlust is sated by their by their adventures out of town.
Players going to be players,
Yeah.
man. They looking for the game. I don't know. Does that answer your
That's
question?
great. I mean, it wasn't my question, but that's I
Oh,
think
okay.
Myers. That was Myers' question. I think that's a great answer. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about crafting that first adventure. Um, Based off of the seasons change roll that you get, your players are going to end up with either a 10 plus and an opportunity. So either interesting news, so some opportunity they can seize, like an arcana or a herd of horses that you could maybe go out and capture, or just something that gives the PCs a path towards making the village a better place or achieving some personal goal. So that might be what they got, or they might have if we go to the next one, we might have a valuable insight into a threat that came up during introductions. So, like, if during the introductions, well, no, like during our introductions, we had a whole bunch of like identified threats, right?
Yeah.
Something's making these people disappear. Like, if you had gotten this one, I almost certainly would have had somebody show up who had escaped from the Fae,
Oh, awesome.
right? And so like that would have been the valuable insights, like an opportunity to learn what's happened to these people and then have some path of like, oh, well, we have to go rescue them, or now we have the opportunity to go rescue them. And then the trade opportunity is basically someone from a neighboring community comes in and like, hey, if you do this for me, I'll give you this. And that just kind of sets them up on some kind of an adventure. But what's more likely to happen is you're going to get a threat in a game, or like we got a full on just nope, just threats,
Just it's all
and
bad.
it's all bad, and then you prep the danger that the PCs are going to have to react to.
Is there an
Uh,
intentional like there? It's not necessarily a concentric ring, but those first two are essentially pushing players out into the world in different ways. Where it sounds like the like a 6 or less is pulling them into the area. Typically, it sounds like right around Stonetop in the village. Was that an intent? I may be misreading that, but is that an intentional choice, or was that? Do you think that's just a product of what makes the most imminent threat?
I think that's just a product of what makes the most imminent threat, right? And that kind of ties back to, if we are looking at the kind of write-ups on these, if you get the 10 plus, the opportunity that you provide them needs to be external because you want to pull them out, but it needs to be near enough that it's not like, oh, we can't possibly justify doing
Yeah.
it. Whereas if you end up with a threat, right, the threat needs to be external to get them out, nearby so that they can reasonably deal with it, Stonetop's problem so that they can't just go, well, that's not really affecting us. And there has to be some sense of urgency that if they don't act on it, it's going to get worse. And then that same logic applies to just the threats abound. But because with threats abound, you don't really have anything good and you do have some bad, you kind of have permission on this one to get nasty. Like I did a pretty gentle threats abound
Yeah.
where like everything was generally okay, but then we just like, oh no, a kid's gone missing
Yeah,
again.
you just stole children from the village.
I
Totally,
just stole
totally
just
stuff.
one. I
Just
only
one.
stole one. I
Well,
just made sure that everybody loved him.
there were some other ones stolen before, as I recall.
Oh,
But
sure. Yeah, but that was already established, Tony. I didn't do that.
that's true. It was all Darby's fault. And so,
Yeah, I blamed her. All right, so we ended up with threats abound. And we had all of this stuff pointing at the Fae. You had your something wicked this way comes with the serpent, which honestly threw me for a bit of a loop because I wasn't really sure how to make that tie into the
yeah.
Fae stuff. And that ended up being one of the things that like, I was pinging Luke about like any ideas on this one, and they suggested that tying it back into the Red Grove and Darby having violated the Red Grove for to get her
Yeah.
little effigy guy.
Yeah. And
Which
is that what it was? Like this was basically the forest mad. Is that kind
Mhm.
of the cool? Love it.
Yep,
Yeah, because I
yep,
it,
that's
it it
exactly
it felt really distinctive, but we were all experiencing it so fast, so new. I'm like, these feel connected but separate, right? Like, and which is exactly what you want, right? And I think it became like, I think there, like I can see a player basically still trying to connect those dots afterwards. I think the way you ran it in for our table, once we sat down and kind of processed through that experience, it was like, cool, these don't feel connected. Like these are part of what's happening in the woods, and there may be ways that would play out later on, but right now we've got a missing kid and we've got a snake, and they're both here, but they are not the same thing.
right. All right. And it was really tempting to make them somehow related, right? To just make everything tie together. Um, but I think one of the things when you're dealing with a game world
Hold on, I may
as
have a sink overflowing. Give me 2 seconds. Or you keep on talking. Just know I'll be right back.
okay, um, so yeah, one of the things that you probably want to avoid with a game that's as widely ranging as Stonetop right, and that can play out over a long period of time, is that you don't want there to be, you don't want everything to be just so conveniently tied back to itself. So it helped a lot that the snake was not related to the Fae, other than, um, well, it ended up like being something that Darby's nemesis Fae had like put on her trail, but it wasn't like the snake itself wasn't Fae. It was just mad at Darby or mad at Owena.
The flood was minor. I'm always glad
Glad
it
to hear
happened.
it.
It seems to only happen when I'm streaming, and honestly, that's the best time for a sink to overflow in your basement because you can get up and do something about it.
I
So
suppose, because why would you be in your basement watching the sink overflow?
yeah, and so
All right. Okay. Where I'm sorry, where were? Oh, right. So threats abound. I knew that we had Faye. I knew that we had the snake. I knew that I wanted to make things worse. Now, if we had had more urgent threats like established in during character creation, you're perfectly justified in something like the in a 6- on this to just be like, nope, I am cranking the screws up and
yeah,
like start with not someone disappearing, but someone has already disappeared,
mm-hmm.
or like there are bandits encamped outside of the village already, and what are we going to deal with it? Like you can go hard with this, um, and or you can have the hook when you drop it, like actually full on do a meet with disaster. Like there was another game of Stonetop that I ran, where they got the 6-, and then the hook was this demon child just wandering into the fields and being like, "Can we play?" And it just tore apart some of the villagers, and left. And that is a horrific thing to have happen to the
Yeah.
village, and the PCs didn't have any chance to do anything about it because it happened all the way out there. So you can go pretty hard on a threats abound. We went pretty soft. Um, but yeah, as far as prepping goes, I had already, like, as part of putting this together and then just kind of like putting the timeline together, I'd started writing up threats, and you can kind of see my thought process here of just like, okay, well, whatever took Owena, and you can actually see like, I'm thinking Faye, there's a time skip, there's a kidnapped child in the woods, it seems perfect. Whatever took the forest folk feels connected. Whatever took Castor the prior judge, probably the same Faye, right? Like literally just mental, stream of consciousness, putting these things together. And you can see some ideas that I rejected. Like, is there a Fae living in the village? Or did they give some item power to Trapcaster? Hint, they did. Right, and uh, uh, et cetera, et cetera. Me thinking about the serpent, fear and suspicion were, just things that had been established, particularly towards Owena, um, and so on and so forth. And then here's me just sort of like making notes, obvious bit about the big snake. So I'm just kind of like thinking through it. And then I remembered that there were dangerous artifacts in the Chronicle, and that made me start thinking about stuff. And you're just, you're processing. And a lot of this is also then happening in the background, just, your brain simmering, you're talking to your friends, etc. So like Hobbs, of course, when we went on a walk or two, got an earful of all of this.
Mm-hmm. And they said hit him harder.
Eventually, yes. She said, "Kill him, damn it, you coward!" during the last session.
She did say that and did forget she was logged into the official account. I'll say it as I recall. Which was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Got a question about the community building aspects, some of the other things like that. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you say it. As from RPG Design, who just discovered the game last night. They just watched the Quinn's Quest review. They're here joining us, but they wanted to know Were you inspired by Quiet Year or Wander Home in any of the aspects of this? Wander Home feels like you probably have not played it because it came out when you were not playing many games.
Both of them, actually, right?
Okay.
Like, I am familiar with both of them. I have never actually even picked up and read Wander Home. Like, I know the general trope, I know the kind of feel of it, I know it by reputation. I know what everybody knows about it. Like, the veteran can draw their weapon and kill someone, and then they have to leave play, right? Like, I know that stuff about it, but I haven't actually played that game, or read through it. The Quiet Year, I'm more familiar with. I haven't played it, but I have kind of like flipped through it. But again, both of those came well after the bones of Stonetop had already been laid.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the game that really inspired Stonetop, see if you can find a copy of Vincent Megbaker's Storming the Wizard's Castle. That is the game that kind of kicked off the idea that became Stonetop. They never published it, but I think you can still find PDFs of it floating around somewhere on the
Yeah.
internet. Um, yeah, was that your
That was it.
that was your answer? Okay.
I
All
mean,
right.
yeah, my assumption was I know how little you have played games while working on Stone Top, and so my assumption was at least Wander Home for sure, but probably the Quiet Year also were too new for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and like we started working on this before Blades in the Dark stuff was out,
Yeah.
right? So, like that's another framework that you could easily imagine building a community-based game off of. And there's games like A State that I think are probably a good companion piece for Stonetop because of, like you've got that map of assets and the building up of the base and so forth. Um, I think that would actually work pretty well for a community style game like Stonetop. What was that? Dwarven Home, Mountain Home, the Dwarf Fortress role playing game
Yeah, I'm
that's
trying to remember the name of it, and
Blades
so
in the Dark.
yeah,
But
and
that's another one.
yeah.
Oh,
Speaking of Forge in
good.
the Dark, Hold Fast Station, which was a
Oh,
was
right,
a
right.
stretch goal for this, which is now coming into a normal full print, not just print on demand. It may have arrived at the warehouse today. I don't know though. Is available now too, but it is if you want something that's pick up and play without the session zero or the prep that uses Forge in the Dark to do some similar community focused play. Hold Fast Station is a great version of that.
All right. So yeah, going back to the prep stuff, right? So eventually I was like, okay, I gotta make this Fey. And that I didn't have any of the Fae in book two, or none of the Fae in book two felt exactly right. There's a bunch of Fae in book two that, kind of like standard ones that are already made that could be involved in like stealing people. But I wanted to make a new one, partly just because I didn't want to just use any of them, but mostly because they didn't feel right. So for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, I guess spoilers for stuff that's in book two is coming here.
Yeah. It's
If I
probably
can
it's
eventually get it.
yeah. I was going to say it's probably worth taking a beat to talk a little bit about how Fae are distinctive in the setting as part of that, because your statement was it had to be Fae, you knew it had to be Fae, and a lot of that again was some of that was player driven, but that was the feeling. I'm also especially interested because the statement of none of them felt right, but they're also right now there's like the Fae Jam going on in the Discord server, which is at ttrpg.link/Stonetop Discord. But Fae are distinctive in this setting in some very specific ways. So, what about the feeling made you realize it needed to be Fae? And what are Fae in Stonetop?
Yeah, so Fae and Stonetop, ultimately, they're what you expect Fae to be from kind of a dark fairy tale, right? They are magical beings, they live in the woods, they're not mortal, but they're not completely spirit either, right? They're kind of halfway between spirit and material. They can't, like, well, what's the there's actually like a nice little spread on Fey nature here. Um, so like they need not eat or drink, but they can enjoy it. They need not sleep, but they often choose to. They can suffocate or drown, but usually recover and once they can breathe again. They feel no drive to reproduce, but they might enjoy sex. They fall in love, sire or bail children, or steal them away from mortals. They do not grow old or feeble with age, but they can grow bored and deeply set in their ways. They cannot break a promise or an oath, but they are keen at finding loopholes. They feel the weight of debts and insults as though they were heavy chains. It's like they're magical beings, but they're not just, spirits. That's
Mm.
another type of thing. And there's a history to them that's very much built into the game's kind of lore that makes them very distinct in that they were created as servants of one of the progenitor civilizations. In this case, the Green Lords. And specifically, they were bred to maintain false afterlives for the Green Lords, and then they revolted and like gutted most of those tombs, and otherwise kind of um, well made the Green Lords regret their choices. Uh, and so what that means is that the Fae are in Stonetop, they are very much like the Fae you would expect them to be. And just about any Fae that you can imagine from folklore or any character like Fae type creature that you can imagine coming up with for any game, it has a place here. It fits, but it's going to get a little spin on it. And that spin is largely going to be the scars related to them having been born into servitude and suffered through war. Right.
Yeah.
So that's how they're kind of different and distinct in Stonetop. And and so like stealing children, stealing people in the woods, time lapse, like that's all classic Fae stuff. Like, and that wasn't anything specific to Stonetop. That's just like, oh yeah, this smells like some Fae bullshit right here. And then the book has, if we kind of skip forward here, there are a number of kind of established Fae in the game. And you guys actually met some. Like, here's the Bear of Winter that poor Nathan's character was ran afoul of.
Uh,
Um,
he earned it well
and
though.
oh
This
yeah,
was so
yeah, yeah.
good.
But anyhow, so like there's all of these guys, and like a lot of these, if you squint at them, you'll recognize them. Like
Mm.
the bloody boots are basically red caps, but just with a slight little twitch to it, or twist to it. And like this guy, Grimstew, is uh, kind of Rumpelstiltskin-y, um, and so on. But if if you don't find one here that suits your needs, it has a whole section here on creating Fae. And so a lot of the sections in book 2 are going to have stuff for, hey, you need to create a chimera made by the Green Lords? Well, roll on some tables or make some choices on some tables. Or you want to make a Fae, do this. You want to make a corrupted being? Well, start with this and then roll on these things. So it's not a mechanical process so much as it is a series of spark tables. And then once you kind of get a vision of what this creature is like, you take that and then you run it through the monster creation tools and you come up with stats for it. So I didn't have any of the existing ones jumping to mind. So I rolled, and we got preoccupation with playing, reveling, tricking, and subverting. Very luminous and fiery, iridescent chitinous, bug-like and alien, winged, beaked, feathered, spindly, and 5 out of 6 for how humanoid they were. And so like, and then so like I read that and I'm like, well, that could go in a bunch of different ways, but I kind of went with luminous and bug-like and iridescent and spindly and extremely humanoid, and basically found myself thinking of like this sounds like just some kind of creepy ass fairy godmother,
Yeah.
especially when we then looked at their talents and what they were bred for. So like influencing the inanimate beasts, birds, and bugs, shape changing and transformations, and fey domains. And then when I rolled up what they were originally for, is like bred to create or maintain a false afterlife, and they were a hero ringleader mastermind. It was like, oh crap, this is some kind of fey queen.
Hmm.
And like that just sort of informed, okay, we've got like incredibly powerful character. Um, but she has this lasting mark of emptiness, loneliness, grief, ennui. So you've got something like a fey queen, basically, a little bit bug-like, but mostly humanoid, with power, with really impressive powers of like just creating and changing domains, changing other people, influence over the spirits. You've got a ringleader who used to maintain and was bred to maintain a Green Lord's false afterlife. Like, and then you've got this emptiness, loneliness, grief, and now she's stuck on playing, reveling, tricking, and subverting. Well, reveling. So this gives us our Fey Queen. She was the architect of a Green Lord's afterlife, and when the revolt happened, or when the rebellion happened, she imprisoned her Green Lord. Like she
Hmm.
turned the tables on him. She became one of the ringleaders of the rebellion, but then she clearly lost something important to her in the rebellion or after it or whatever. And that's left her just like seeking empty pleasure, throwing these eternal revels, and trying to like forget her own pain.
Hmm.
Right.
Now I'm trying to remember if I'm jumping ahead, we can
Mm-hmm.
pause and come back to it. But let's talk about. Can we talk? Is this a good time to talk about the love letter for Darby?
It trend, yeah, it starts to become a good one.
Okay.
But I guess before we get there, like I had this character in my mind, but I still didn't really know what to do with her.
Okay.
And as I started really kind of getting into prepping the adventure threat per se, where did that go? Okay, so this is just like me making notes of all the different threats that are out there. Was it in here? Nope, that's actually nope, that's actually doing the prep.
I
Um,
love how you were like, I didn't write a lot, but also you did write two 600-page books, and so this is
yeah,
comparatively not a lot.
this is comparatively not a ton. And again, this is just stream of consciousness stuff in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, right? Just kind of notes to self, right? Because you can see like a lot of this stuff is just me asking myself questions as I'm going, and that's just my creative process.
Hmm.
Um, all right, so and like there's stuff that I threw away. Like I like the idea of a Fey domain where the Menhirs are actually imprisoned forest folk. That's just like a throwaway line in book two. Ended up not using it at all, right? Because it didn't work with that steal and away friendless rebel instead. Um, so anyhow, we eventually, oh yeah, and then this is me trying to like work her into the timeline because obviously she snagged Owain, and then at some point I realized that Owain and Owena's parents like leaving and having abandoned her was just like, oh, they totally didn't abandon her. They went looking for their kid and then ran afoul of this
Hmm.
queen, and she just snagged them as well. Um, and I held that one until the very end, and
That
I
was
thought that
great.
was I thought that one worked out well.
Yeah, it was a great. I don't think any of
Um,
us saw it coming.
excuse me. Yeah, so then here you can see me kind of figuring out like the Blossom Queen figuring about some chronicle or artifact in the chronicle. And that wasn't really fitting. Like I wasn't happy with the art of like the artifacts I was coming up with or the motives for her having to get involved with the judge. And at some point, and here it is. Maybe, no. Anyway, at some point in this, I figure out, okay, well, what is the loss? What caused that emptiness, loneliness, grief, ennui? And that's where I realized, okay, there was a lover, right? She had like a Fey consort or something like that. And so I rolled up another Fey that was part of her domain, and that gave us the character that didn't actually really come up at all, but it was, I think I've got him written down here. Yeah, Tom Bulgander.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the Blossom Queen's consort, confident, guardian, and enforcer, with her throughout the war, wounded by an assassin with a black iron blade, but the queen wouldn't let him die, used old Green Lord magic to bind him in the maw, visits him there from time to time when her loneliness grows too great, but still remembers what he was sometimes, but mostly he's just a slave to his hunger.
Yeah.
Right. So he's what in the book is called a hollow fae, which is a fae that has been wounded by this utterly anti-magic metal, and if they don't die, they become utterly monstrous, just driven by hunger and need. So she's got her old lover like stowed away in the maw, and I decided on all that, but I was like, okay, but what the fuck is the motivation here? How does this get involved? And this is where I just turned to Luke and like, here's what I've come up with. And I just started sending them a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's a little bit of kick back and forth. Luke figured, like, I don't remember if Luke mentioned it or if I mentioned it, but we came up with, or like, we remembered that there's that arcana that's the silver branch that you can like shake at
Mm-hmm.
people and it jingles and it takes their cares away. That sounds like something someone suffering from grief and ennui would want. And, then that just kind of led to, okay, well, now we need this old man who used to be the clerk in the Chronicle, and he's the perfect target. He'd be the one that would have like been her dupe and, done the thing on Casper. So it all kind of came together that way.
That's cool. So
All right.
special secret technique when you're prepping and you're stuck, ask
Ask
Luke.
Luke. Yeah.
Message Luke on
Uh,
Discord.
I
Uh,
mean, honestly, anyone that has gone to the Stonetop Discord and been like, I having trouble thinking of this, they have gotten so much good advice from the people there,
yeah.
including Luke, Storyteller, Blazer, like a whole bunch of people that are just like, yeah, do you think about this? Do you think about this? Do you think about this? It's a great community. I'm super happy with them. And we just get more people kind of helping out and keeping ideas around. It's just great. Um, Yeah. Uh, you actually can see me even having copied and pasted some of Luke's little ideas here. Um, but going back to your question about the love letter, once that gelled in my head, then it was just okay, now it's just time to prep the first adventure. And prepping the first adventure, like once you get the idea clear in your head, there's a kind of standard setup. So you've got setup questions, which are going to be questions that you want to ask the players before play begins, that calls back details that were established during introductions and makes people thinking about them, or that introduces a character or a concept or an ongoing threat or an issue that you know is going to be important to the game, like to the upcoming adventure. So like, you can see me right here introducing introducing Tomos right before we started play, so that it was meaningful when he actually got snagged by the Blossom
Yeah.
Queen. Right, and here, this is that first question to you is just like, okay, let's have you establish a detail that calls back to when Owain went missing all those years ago, and so on and so forth. And so we're kind of doing all of that. And then one of the things that you can do in here is drop in a love letter. And love letters, for anyone that's not familiar with them, it's a tech that Apocalypse World originally came up with. The idea is between sessions, your GM writes you a letter. It's largely a custom move, but it also establishes some fictional details in advance, might ask you to establish some fictional details. There's often a role, there's often some choices, but it kind of sets stuff up. And the reason I wanted to do a love letter for Owena on this is because I knew I wanted, she had well versed in the Fae, and she was a witch hunter background. She spent all of her time in the Fae. We didn't really talk about during introductions what she'd gotten up to in the last 15 years that made her so well versed in Fae, and it clearly seemed like she had been fucking around with them, right? Like encountering them, etc. Which means she'd know a bunch of them, and I couldn't just come right out and say, "So, what do you know about the Blossom Queen?" Right? Like that would have been too obvious. So what we did instead is we gave her a love letter that established that she never stopped searching for Owen. She's pretty sure that like I'm tying the connections here to Dobry, her mentor, going missing, and the rest of the forest folk, and Casser, right? Just making it clear that these seem connected. The Fae are the obvious culprits. Everyone knows some stuff about them, but you've faced some of them down. Roll plus int and see how clever and lucky you've been. Excuse me. And if I remember correctly, she got a 7 to 9.
He's a mix.
So one who owes you, one who owes you, one you've insulted, one to whom you are beholden. And then I gave her a list, and all of these except the Blossom Queen are ones that are in the book and that could arguably have been behind a disappearance.
Yeah.
Right. And so imagine my delight. Just fucking imagine my delight.
You were like cackling on, like, we knew it, but we had no idea what it meant. Like, we just knew you were delighted by the choices.
Yep. Because she, without me prompting her, was like, yeah, I guess I'm beholden to the Blossom Queen, which is just the perfect choice. I could not have asked for anything better. And that made a lot of the stuff in the upcoming sessions then just sort of all fit together.
Yeah.
All right. I have to use the bathroom because I have been drinking so much water. Can we take a break, please?
It's a great time to take a break. I don't have a we'll be right back because I'm in the middle of resetting all my scenes because this is a new computer that I'm on, which is great. I love it. My screen doesn't have to be returned on in the middle of things. But we will be back in just a few minutes. By the way, while you're waiting, if you haven't gone over to ttrpg.link/Stonetop, you can go pick up a copy of the game. We only have a handful of copies left in the first run of books, so we do have more on their way. And if you haven't joined the Discord yet, I just dropped the link in a little while ago for that. Or you can over to ttrpg.link/Soothwardens to go check out what Navarre's been up to over there in the world that he's trying to bring to life in a totally luckless RPG. We'll be back in just a couple minutes to keep on talking about prep. Also, if you got questions but haven't tossed them down yet, go toss those questions in. We got it. We're here. We're doing it. It's Stone Talk. I'm gonna vamp because we don't have music, and I'm here's the thing. I day job help run coffee shops, and I for the first hour I'm there before we get super busy. It's like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. I listen to nothing or I listen to podcasts, and then I put on music once people come in. But it is so weirdly silent to be in that space. It's beautiful when it's intentional and by yourself, and it's unnerving when you walk in. Here's my deal. Here's the deal. I don't think anybody's like, oh, there's no music, but also I don't have any of my music stuff set up for pauses or stuff like that. So I'm worried about the eerie silence of having to live with your own mind for a few minutes for all of you, and so I'm going to vamp instead. Let me cruise back through and see if we've missed any fun comments. We did have some people ask, and I'll go ahead and say it because people are watching across different platforms about delivery. The books are arriving tomorrow at 9 a.m. We will start shipping out. We've already started prepping the in AC0 super intensive pack out boxes that we have to do. We have about 500 boxes already set up. As soon as, like, while I am still unloading the box truck, we have 2 assembly lines of people who will be starting to help load them into the warehouse and pack them out. We don't know exactly how many orders we will get through in a day. We will certainly get through 500 to 1,000 tomorrow. I have zero doubt, and we're hoping we can keep that clip up to get the Kickstarter out and fulfilled fully next week and lay into things. Best way to stay up to date on when your order will ship is to make sure you have email notifications turned on for Plus One from Plus One EXP's website. So if you go to the website, sign up to get our emails, you get a discount on your next order of 5%. But you'll also get notified whenever we go live, or whenever we have updates about Stonetop and other things. But yeah, those should all be coming soon. Jeremy has returned. Jeremy, I was worried because I don't have no, they can't see us. I just realized I don't have any of my audio cues set up, and I explained to people that I'm worried about them having to be in the silence of their own thoughts. So I've just been vamping and talking about things. So
I was actually listening to you.
the whole time because you have your earbuds in. We do have a question. Not really. It's a recommendation. Any Stonetop GMs watching, once you see behind the curtain here with Jeremy's prep, rewatch episode 1 of the campaign to see how elegantly and skillfully Jeremy establishes necessary context, sets things in motion. Yeah, I watch session 0, watch session 1 after this. I think it'll bring a lot of things into shape. Great call out there, Luke. I'm very excited about Luke launching a professional Stonetop coaching program on Start Playing also too. Really looking forward to that also too. So Jeremy has returned and we are live again.
So I actually wanted to just kind of say something about that. Like, for any new GM that is coming to this and like feels a little bit overwhelmed by Stonetop, like all of this stuff that I am talking about is largely, at least I have tried to lay out the this whole process of like, okay, how do you actually get the setup, right? So like I've shown this slide of how do you figure out what your threat is, and then think about like how the threat is already manifested, if the threat's established during introductions, blah blah blah. Either way, ask yourself how it's gone bad, etc. Like it gives you a lot of prompting of how do you actually excuse me, go from this kernel of an idea to the thing. And then similarly, for those setup questions that I was talking about, if we go here, right, it once again gives you some guidelines on how to come up with these questions, how to tweak them, how to make sure that you're including everybody in them, what your goals of these are. And it spends a fair bit of time on coming up with that list of questions just to give you that guidance. And there's some example love letters. There's a whole chapter on writing moves in love letters. See previous time that I sat down with Tony and Aaron King on Make Your Move. Tony, vamp.
Vamp,
No.
vamp, 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 vamp,
No.
vamp, vamp, vamp.
I was very much expecting you to just jump in with, oh yes, and if you would like to see that, check out.
You want me to sell?
Yes,
Vamping
that's
is when
what
I'm
I was
filling time. Yeah, you can check
Yeah.
that out. We do a monthly web show with Aaron King. We have John Harper coming on next week to talk about Blades in the Dark and Aegon and all their other great work and its evolution out of PBTA. That's a once-a-month show called Show Me Your Moves. We're sitting down with different designers to explore life and design one PBTA move or philosophy at a time. Come back next Wednesday for that.
Having been on it, it was fun.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the So the chapter very much gives you a structure. I really do think that it will be helpful for people to like kind of put this together and to help put it together. But I also want to assure people that are start picking this up and feeling a little bit overwhelmed by it. Like I still get panicky when I am prepping. Like a huge amount of problem that I have personally when prepping is committing to a decision. And so I like spin my wheels and spin my wheels and spin my wheels often until just like the night or the day before the actual session. And then I am forced to just make some decisions and move forward with it. So like everyone preps differently, everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses on it, and your ideas are probably great, right? Like don't let yourself be paralyzed by, oh, it's not perfect, it's not good enough, it doesn't 100% fit together. Just try it, right? It's probably going to be fine, and if it's not, then you've learned something and you can get a little bit better.
Yeah. And I will say, like, a thing I want to call out as a skill that I've seen you do repeatedly. Like, you prepped the parts you needed to prep. You didn't overburden yourself with things that might matter but weren't central to that, right? Like you had the core outline of the situation at hand. There, it would be regular for us to ask a question and you turn it back on us. So if there's something
Mm-hmm.
that falls outside your prep, you like, if it falls outside of your prep and you don't see how it's directly connected, like turning that back on the players, letting them fill that in, and then again bringing that back into your prep is something we watched you do over and over again. The love letter is a really kind of easy, like you're giving the players a choice. She's making a choice, moving it better. But regularly, if we asked a question, and it wasn't even always the player who asked, it was sometimes the player who would know, the player whose character would know that, like letting Nathan regularly establish for Morcant, like what the legal system looked like in broad strokes, because that's what their character would know when it was about nature, asking me what Vassal would know about that thing. There was this constant movement around the table, which means, you just a reminder, you don't have to prep everything. Like you've got a table of players who you can turn this back to. You need to understand the situation that you've set up and have the prep done around that.
Absolutely, yeah. And that whole idea of when a player character or when a player asks you something that you don't have a particular answer for or have a particular opinion about, by all means, turn it back on them and be like, well, what do you know about this? What, you're the expert, you tell me, or what have you heard, or, etc. So like, use your players as a resource. One of the principles of the game in most PBTA games is to ask questions and build on the answers, and that can take a huge amount of, I have to have everything right and I have to have everything ready off of you. But also, I know what I can do on the fly and what I need to prep for, and so I focus on what I need to prep for. I don't bother with, like, I'll write up a monster's stats, but I don't bother thinking about how am I going to describe this monster. It's clear in my head, and I'm just going to do that. I don't worry about how I'm going to portray this NPC beyond more than a couple of personality notes, and then I'll just, because I can do that. I know how to do that. But your particular needs will probably differ. Yeah. Do you want anything more you wanted to say about that, or?
No, I just want to know, because I saw, again, I saw you do it repeatedly, and I think it's good for people to think about, like, the negative space matters a lot in prep. Like the what doesn't matter, like the knowing that doesn't matter to the situation is huge, because you will otherwise it's madness. Like you'll drive yourself crazy trying to cover all those bases.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, when I was kind of prepping right before the last session, I just did setup questions, and you can see that I spent a bit of time on these. I probably spent most of my time on these because I wanted to make sure that I was involving everyone, hitting the right wording, asking the right things. Obviously, writing a love letter takes a bit of time. So I think I threw this together. It was close to the end, like almost right before we started playing. And then, excuse me. So you can see here, then I've just kind of plotted out some initial scenes. Morcant at the aviary, message, and then this is just sort of establishing normal life. A couple of things to be in here, like to identify. I had completely forgotten that you all had come up with messenger drakes as the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can see here, Magda finds him there, asks about the investigation. That that was the extent of my prep for that whole scene. Really was, what are we going to do there? And then a big old surly bird, what do you call him, gets agitated as you talk. I knew at this point, I was pretty sure that Kasser had been turned into a bird or a drake, as it turned out. But I hadn't committed to it yet, but I wanted to lay the seed. And so I was, I just made a little note to myself to do that.
Yeah. That was
right. And
that was such a good slow burn. And even when at the table we were like, well, there's a distinct bird. Some of us forgot there were two distinct birds flying around at that point in time, and people were like it was such a good, again, there were these consistent moments of like player discovery happening along with character discovery that were truly satisfying.
Well, good. Yeah. So again, I have just kind of like really roughly drafted out the various like big points that I wanted to hit. Right. So like Owena following Tomos on the sly. What about Vassalsum always makes you feel melancholy? And then I had Luella. Oh yeah. This was a move I was planning to make as the GM, and then Owena was like, "I'd hide in the bushes," and that just gave us that just kind of shifted who she went and dealt with. And then I wanted to end with Karna and Neris and Yorath, specifically because I wanted to really establish that character of Yorath and the relationship that they had, and make him a sympathetic character because I knew he was going to become, well, basically the culprit behind everything within the village. So, and then evening falls, start to come home. Things are getting set up for the public house. Things that I wanted to make sure that happened, right? Flirting with Di, Morcant and Neris together, Yorath in the corner drinking, saying it's not fair, I've been tricked, and then the twins coming home, and Tomos is gone. And like that scene, some of that played out as expected, but not a ton. Like I didn't have any plans for like the whole Pole is doing a performance and the tension of like you're gonna be there, right? Like all of that stuff just came out naturally during play.
Yeah. That's good. And again, depending on your table to fill those spaces. Like this is not a game where players are going to sit back and just be like, tell me a story. Like there's the engagement and the back and forth of those conversations.
Especially in those first scenes with the NPCs that they've kind of established in their homes and the daily life and then what's going on with that. You want the players to be providing a lot of that meat on the bone. And so you'll notice, again, in a lot of these cases, it's questions that I'm asking the players that's pulling a lot of that information
out. Yeah. I was a youth worker for over a decade. And anytime we had a meeting, it was really funny because there was somewhere I would show up and it was very clear, like, especially when I was new somewhere, people would be like, well, you're going to talk to us about something for an hour and a half. And I was like, I have prepped 5 to 10 minutes of me talking about something and then like 10 to 15 discussion questions, because my expectation is that's what's interesting. Like, it's not what I think, right? Like I can tell you some things, but like what is good and what is helpful is like asking those questions. So Like when you are in that prep mode of thinking about like what questions you want to ask, are there certain things you kind of lean into? Like as you're looking kind of back at your prep, what is your process for formulating a good question?
Um, I mean, honestly, I probably have it written down. Uh,
Good job, past Jeremy.
I mean, I put it in my book so I wouldn't have to remember. No, I like it's the kind of thing that where I've done it now so much that I'm not thinking about
Right.
this very often, right? But you can see in here some examples. So like there's what you're asking questions about. So like key details about the backstory, about the hook, about etc. Like things that need to be established. Highlighting setting elements that you want to make just that you think are going to be relevant or you want to bring to people's minds, and stuff that you want to foreshadow. But a lot of it is this making things personal. So trying to make sure that you're spreading it around, right? Just like Spotlight, you want to make sure you're asking questions of everybody. Try, like, if there's an imbalance, try asking someone about something that wouldn't immediately fall to them, just as a way to kind of like tie that character into this conversation or into this bit. It's like the whole thing with Tomos, right? I don't know if you noticed in my prep, the obvious person to ask about Tomos would have been Owena,
Mm-hmm.
because like he was the character that she had established as like someone that she was watching. That was part of her introduction questionnaire. And we already knew that he reminded her of her missing brother, right? And so obviously that was the character that the NPC that I was gonna kidnap. But I wanted everybody else to have some hooks into that character. So asking Karna right off the bat about Tomas and what he found so beautiful or interesting about this kid, that immediately draws him into like the orbit of this child. And like asking Vasil about where do the twins and Thomas play, right? That same sort of thing. And it established a bunch of details that would be very easy to then riff on, of like, oh well, they play near the bear
Which is
caves, huh? Cool.
a great horrible answer. My, where do my kids
Yup.
play? Near the bear caves. Uh,
But also that establishes a lot about like you as a parent and your kids and Tomos and it gave me a rife bit of conflict for like you and your partners and you and Luella, right?
yeah.
Owen is or Thomas's foster mom. So like that's one of the things that you definitely want to do, is just like get all of the characters involved and make the questions personal. Like make them about their lives, their opinions, their connections to these other characters. And so like you can see examples of me doing this over here. But also again, you are I mean, part of this goes into the art of asking questions in Powered by the Apocalypse style games, right? Which is sometimes it's a question's just a question, like, oh, what does that look like? How you doing this? What do you think about that? But a lot of the most powerful questions are the ones where the question is itself loaded,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like the question, actually, just going back to those questions for like Tomo and whatnot. If we go back up to here, so like Tomos is a quiet, watchful child soul that strikes you as truly beautiful. What is it? How did you come to see it? Like that's a very loaded question that it basically says, you think this kid's great, and tell me why. but it is very loaded. It's
Yeah.
establishing as much as it is asking the player, right? And it's taking the thing that needs to be true or that I want to be true and phrasing it as part of the question.
Yeah. And it's a classic debate, like an influence technique is to kind of I mean, and it is in that format, it is a subtle manipulation of like conversation, right? Where you basically are going to ask this question, but you're going to use the front half of the statement to establish a fact that your opponent might like won't necessarily object to. There's nothing to the table that says that lets someone say, "Oh, I don't think they're beautiful." It would be weird, right? Like that's what we're all here doing. And I think at a generous table, you're never going to come up with that, like never going to come up against that. But it is the reason it's effective is the reason it's actually helpful in a consenting situation like tabletop role playing games is like people actually do want a mental handhold to grab onto, and you're giving them one. Like that is it is not a
Mm-hmm.
form of manipulation like it is in debate. It is a form of like, hey, let's go ahead. I'm going to give you the gift of just giving you a handhold into the world. You've met this child, they seem like a beautiful soul. I'm going to give you full freedom to tell me why that is. Like there's an
Yep.
implicit give and take that's happening there that in other types of conversation has some toxic elements. In this, it's actually like tremendous like gift to do that. And again,
Right.
if somebody's like, oh, I don't necessarily see my character as being like friendly to children, that's a thing that we can like tap, have that conversation, step back, adjust still. But for most players, and especially the table we were playing with, like we were all hungry for those things. And I think Stonetop does do a good job of like the world is so big and like people can see that looking at the books, looking at the setup, looking at everything else. So I think every time you as a GM are giving your players something, they're going to be really hungry to latch onto that thing also too. So
Yep.
I think people need to like very clearly understand like that type of assertion of like here's the thing is actually like what your players are waiting for because it gives them something to build on also too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this concept of creative crystallization, right? Like you can ask someone a very open question, but you're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
mushy response in most cases. But if you give someone a hard edge to play off of, then their creativity can crystallize off of it and then grow and grow and grow into something more.
Yeah.
And they're always going to take it in, not always, but they're often going to take that and spin it or build on it in a way that you didn't necessarily expect.
Yeah. Um,
And even if they don't, right? Even if it's just, you know, like an unrelated to a character establishment thing, but like you're traveling through the woods, you ask one of the characters, what's the worst thing about traveling like this hike through the woods? And they come up with a very obvious question like it's hot, I'm tired, my feet hurt, blah blah blah. Great, that's the most obvious answer in the world, but you know what that player just did is they put themselves in the shoe, like they visualize themselves feeling all of those
mm,
things. And even if they didn't add anything to the fiction, they added it. They put themselves in their character in a much more visceral way.
yeah. I mean, the like the paint the scene move that Jason Cordova popularizes, right? Like of hey, let's all go around and say how we know that a Medusa lives in this crypt, right?
Hmm.
Or let's go all around and tell how we can tell that the sun is oppressive on or that this hike has been an arduous journey. Everyone's going to
Right.
give in their thing, but it is it's creating that mental handhold, and you're getting again. Oh, so and so said this. I'm going to build on it with this. I'm going to grab it for, and it's going to take things in entirely different directions. Good PBTA questions, and Luke calls this out in chat. PBTA questions that mean that characters are in practice co-created and partially co-owned. Right, there is that
Hmm.
give and take, and it's really funny because it's very common in PBTA. But the other place I see it regularly, even if they're not co-created in the same way, the type of character control that moves around happens a lot in the OSR, where the GM will suddenly dictate a thing that your character is or has done because of a choice the player has made. It is something you see in PBTA a lot. It's something you see in OSR a lot, where there's this kind of fluid movement back and forth. And the PBTA and OSR games are the two places I feel very comfortable doing it. If I'm playing a trad game, and I would never be like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you what's happening to your character right now," because the agency controls are very different for player expectations.
And player culture stuff too, right?
Yeah,
Like Yeah. Anyway, yeah,
That's great. That was a great answer to the question about questions.
okay. Question about questions. All right. Yeah, so I will point out here that in my prep, right, going back to that whole thing of only prep what you need, I didn't prep anything about the expedition. I didn't prep where the expedition was going to be going to, or like where Tomos would be have been hijacked from, and like all of the stuff about oh, whatchamacallit, oh well, all the stuff about like how Owena, Darby's character, had gotten like called away or like lured away from the children, right? Like that was all just sort of like made up based off of stuff that had already been kind of established during play. Like, well, the what do you call it? The herbalism or the Blossom Queen or whatever, right? Like we just kind of riffed and riffed and riffed, and I didn't feel like there was a bit of a like a particularly difficult thing to make up because yeah, I was like, okay, there's probably a waystone. It's going to be near the Vic Caves. There's going to be some weird fairy bullshit. I can riff this.
Yeah.
Right. And then I forget who it was. Oh yeah, Morkan, right? Nathan's character rolled the biff on the Seek Insight to like investigate the scene, and that's just a gift, right? Because okay, well, time to introduce the threat. Ooh, excuse me. And that brought us to the end of the session, and then I had time to figure out more about what was going to go on in the next one.
Yeah, it was great to see just how. And again, it's super delightful to look behind the scenes now and be like, cool. Some of this stuff felt a certain way from the other side. Hearing kind of how it was allowing you to pull things together, like, is tremendously delightful, because this is, again, I think where a lot of people struggle with this. And even like, again, I think this is going to be the thing where people who are like, well, I don't do prep for PBTA, or people like me who are like, I just don't do prep when I run RPGs. Like, I run RPGs that allow me to do things. And I am the kind of person who's like, well, if prepping is thinking about the session I'm going to run, I prep a ton. If prepping is writing things down, I historically prep almost nothing, right? The nice thing about having these structures is it's exactly what the kind of thing that I will respond to as a GM, of like, oh, there's a structure that I'm just populating. Like, I can work through that. I don't want to sit down and just try to figure out all the things I need to come up with, knowing, hey, I'm going to take all the questions and all the conversations we've had, and then based on the roles that we've had and the mechanics of the game, basically put it through its paces and be intentional about not just thinking about it, but putting it down so it's in a concrete space, is something that is tremendously easy for me to do, right? Like, it's something that feels enjoyable, because the how do I do it is answered for me. It is just the process of doing it, and it's tremendously helpful. So yeah, like I said,
I remember
it's great.
first encountering that kind of thing with I think it was Dogs in the Vineyard, right? Where like that you have that town creation process, and it's very much okay, ask yourself this, think about this, then do this. Imagine what would happen if the VCs hadn't been there. What do the demons want, right? And it just like makes you think through things, and suddenly everything becomes very quite clear.
Mm.
And yeah, I go back to my own words and my own processes and actually do use them. Sometimes I forget that I've got that process, and then like I'll be, oh duh, why am I spending so much time on this? I wrote it all down.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I go back and read the process.
Yeah.
But I do just want to point out something that might not be obvious to everyone. Like, I think I do mention or suggest doing this in the game ongoing chapter of Stonetop. But when we do the formal end of session move, I always take notes, and I take very detailed notes about not just the things that like stars and wishes, but I'll like write down everybody's instinct and whether or not they hit them and what scene they think they hit them with or didn't hit them with. What relationship changes people have experienced or observed at the end of the session. What, they people called out as having learned about the world, or things where they like improved their standing with the neighbors. The reason I write this stuff down, in addition to the stars and wishes, is that this helps me think, like formalize what was important, what were the key things, the key takeaways that people had at the end of that session, and it just brings it front of mind and makes it easy to do or easy to kind of riff off of.
Yeah.
And if we weren't playing like back to back like we were, I find that this is enough notes for me to then think back on the session and be like, okay, right, these are some of the key things, what happened. And then I can, like, if we don't have a judge and someone taking a detailed chronicle, I can recreate a session recap pretty easily just from this.
Yeah. And if people haven't read that playbook or haven't watched it through, it's one of the best pieces of game designer support for a GM by creating a playbook that is mechanically incentivized to just take notes and then remind everybody what happened last time. It was so much fun in play, and it is one of the things that attracted Nathan to the playbook from the rip. I know, so it was super fun to see that all come together. Any other big notes on prep? Any other things we really want to hit? I have 3 more questions. Two from chat, one from me.
Okay. So between sessions, obviously, think about what the trajectory of the game, and think about what you need to prep for the next session, right? So like in this case, I ended the last session with the serpent, so I needed to make stats for that serpent. So that was like the first thing I had to do. And then I wanted to, like, I wasn't sure if you guys were going to find an entrance to the Blossom Queen's domain, so I started like rolling up the Fey domain and just starting getting a sense of it. So I kind of did those things, and then honestly, that was about it, right? Because those are the only things I needed to do and make decisions about. Everything else I knew I was going to be able to just improvise. Also, we only literally had like, less than 24 hours between sessions. So,
Yeah.
I had stuff to do. So like, do what you need to do what you think will then make things better for you when you run the game, and then do the stuff after that that is just fun for you, right? Things that you will enjoy, that you will get joy out of.
Yeah.
And that carried us through, like that approach carried us very, very far on. So like I did write down, after I knew that you guys were going to go back and confront Yorath, I did spend a fair amount of time like really thinking through what Yorath's story was and what he had done and how he was motivated. And then that kind of got me to write up a timeline of what had actually happened. And then, like I wrote him up as a formal threat of like, here are his dooms, here's his stakes, here's the moves that he might make. And then I thought a little bit about like, if they investigate him without directly going after him, what are some clues that they might encounter? So it's just, thinking through what I needed to do to make that observation work.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. So that's prep.
That's prep. So I want to start with my big question, and then we'll hit some chat questions also that came up along the way. I have learned from our conversations, from spending time with the book, and the interviews that we've done, like, and this is a general skill that game designers, period, have to learn, but that narrative design specifically, I think, demand. And you have a I can't remember which side of the GM responsibilities on, but respect to your prep is, I believe, the term that you use in the book, and that's a very specific term. And you make very intentional choices when you are writing everything that you write. So I want to hone in on like that phrase specifically, because doing prep is one thing, right? Having prep is one thing. Respecting your prep is a different thing, because what I would imagine is that the encouragement here is like hold to it, and maybe that's wrong, but right, like, but you're gonna have the temptation at some point to be like, well, I prepped this, but what's happening is, is over. And maybe I just let that go, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that specific phrase, any intentionality behind the choice, and kind of like what those words really do when you have the prep done? Because you just walked us through how to do it. You walked us through how you executed it in play, but I think that phrasing is probably really important. I would love to hear you maybe talk for just a minute or so about that.
Sure. So there's different schools of prep, right? Like if you think about, you brought up Jason Cordova, who's, very much a champion of the figure it out together at the table, right? Like the writer room approach.
Yeah, CFB is super collaborative.
Right, exactly. And like the whole paint the scene technique that he kind of pioneered and made popular. Stuff like the labyrinth move from, for Dungeon World that he kind of like popularized. All of that stuff is kind of taking advantage of this. Well, and then like his idea of the 7-3-1 technique, right? Where you prep like 7 elements and 3 things about each element and 1 way to embody each element, which is a very useful technique. And I definitely borrowed it and used it a lot in book 2. But what they all have in common is this kind of fuzziness. They're all about creating things that exist in potentia, right? They're all quantum ogres. And the cool thing about that is, yeah, we're collaborating, we're coming up with this thing on the fly, and it's just like this works, and then, oh yeah, wouldn't it be awesome if this happened, and boom. And that's great, but for Stonetop in particular, Stonetop, one of the chief agenda items for Stonetop is to create a rich and mysterious world. And in order for there to be a rich and mysterious world, there has to be things that feel like they have weight, that feel blorby, right? To borrow the OSR term. Even if they're not super blorby, right? Like if they're not completely well defined, you kind of want to know that, like, okay, this is what's actually going on here, and have a story behind it, so that even if the players never learn the full story, they feel like there is a story there. And that adds to that richness and to that mystery. And while some people can pull that off completely fabricated and improvised, the best way to do it is to decide in advance, right? It's to just like have some concrete decisions of like, okay, what is the fey creature that's doing this? Well, it's this Blossom Queen. What's her deal? Well, she suffered this great loss and is drowning her sorrow. But, she also is this great and powerful queen, and blah, 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 blah. Like knowing that in advance, you're establishing fiction, and you're doing it on your own, but you're establishing fiction that then the players can, and the PCs can interact with and feel like something is really there. It's largely borrowed from the OSR notions of like, yeah, have a world that you are exploring, or even like arguably the sim like school of thought of, yeah, there should be something that I can feel like is real that I'm interacting with. And when you ask me questions that make me make up the fiction, it feels like the world is hollow. But if you figure out what's important, like to actually be going on behind the scenes, and you lay some groundwork for that, and then you build off of and borrow from the setting guide to kind of help make sure it's all in line, you end up creating this world that is really rich and feels very real and mysterious, even though your Stonetop and my Stonetop are fundamentally different. Well, not fundamentally, but they're very different from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get this kind of multiversal reality from all the stone tops, and what anchors each one of them differently is that prep and those choices, right? And this comes out like anytime there's a game where there's an anti-canon, like unless you're going to be just fully gonzo, no continuity, nothing matters, you've got to figure out ways to anchor that. And Luke said in the chat to further your statement about the best way, it's the most reliable way because prep isn't vulnerable to my improv vibes game. We're off this week, right?
Exactly. Yep. And I will say, like, one of the other things to kind of keep in mind is that respect your prep is a principle, and all of your principles are sometimes in conflict with each other, right? And all of them are sometimes in conflict with just practical reality. So like when I'm prepping something, I'm making some concrete decisions with time and care between sessions because that's when I can do it calmly and carefully and, really kind of think it through. And yeah, I'm going to put off making firm decisions until like an hour beforehand, but I'm going to be thinking about all the possibilities for a long time. Yeah. And eventually I'm going to set on something. And doing that is a good practice and a good discipline, but it also can, like, you can make mistakes when you're doing prep. And if you realize that you set something up that just doesn't work, or the players come up with a better idea, then great. Like, be a fan of the characters and, oh yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. And I'm just going to pretend that was true all along. And it just is a little tweak to your prep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's fine. That's good. That's natural. That's going to happen.
And it's also, I think there's a reality at like, there's a level at like respecting your prep doesn't always mean that, like, it doesn't mean that it can't grow and evolve with what's happening at the table. Like that like, to a certain degree would be a form of disrespecting your prep, would be to letting it crystallize too much.
Right. Point in fact, the whole when I like did the reveal of the Blossom Queen story to Darby, right, to Owena, and I don't remember if it was her that said it, or somebody else that said it, was like, did they have a kid? Right?
Yeah.
And I had somehow completely missed that they would have had a kid, and that would make perfect resonance on this.
Yeah.
Like,
and,
so it was just like,
and like that, it's so resonant with what is happening of, we've got to go get these kids are disappearing. That it seems so obvious. But again, that's the beauty of, like, you've done the prep, a player is coming in alongside that. They're entering into that co-creative reality. Because in the same way that characters are co-creative, like, so is the world and the experience that, like, is being fostered at the table, but it grows out of the reality of that prep. Like, that structure matters.
And another kind of element about that, prep is one of the most reliable ways to prevent you from pulling your punches. Right? So, like, in service of let things burn, one of the other principles, if you've got a monster statted up and that monster is doing 1d10 plus 4 damage with the advantage on the die, it becomes kind of difficult to say, yeah, I guess he didn't die, right? Or whatever, when you're smashing the PC twice in a row.
Yeah. No matter how many birds are there trying to help him, like, it doesn't matter. Awesome. Couple good questions from the chat. Hopefully we can get to them really quick, because it's been a great conversation, and we would talk for hours, but we will have to draw to a close at some point. So this is a pretty loaded question, so let's take it where it makes sense. All of that, this is kind of all that's great. You wrote this book. For somebody who is new, and this comes from Myred again, who's been asking great questions all night long. And we're seeing this a lot in the Stonetop Discord, ttrpg.link/Stonetop Discord, of people who are like, oh, like, I want a GM, but like, I'm worried about taking in everything that's in book 2. I kind of want to experience it as it goes. Like, what would be different for like a new GM, and how would you kind of help? What advice would you provide for them to onboard themselves to the richness of the world you've created? Because you're saying things like, I knew there'd be a waystone, I could put stuff together, but if they don't have all that information readily at hand,
Yeah.
obviously you've written a book to support them, but it is a lot of information. And if they're like, I want to start
Oh
playing
yeah,
now,
yeah. No,
where do
there's
they start?
absolutely. I never. I would never assume that someone is going to read book two in particular, beginning to end. And even if they did, I wouldn't make the assumption that they would have remembered half of it.
Yeah.
Right. Um, so the way that I generally find myself interacting with it, and the way that I expect people to interact with it, is all right. You do your session zero. Your players come up with their characters. The characters have a bunch of interesting things that are kind of sparking off of each other and sort of little hooks that they've dangled. The players have told you stuff that they're interested in about playing their characters. They've told you things that they found interesting from the setting guide. You got a bunch of ideas right there, and now you've got a seasons change roll that's telling you to go in a particular direction with all of that. Right? Come up with a threat. Come up with an opportunity. Come up with a whole bunch of threats. And the from so you're going to have a bunch of stuff like, okay, well, this player's interested in the makers, this player's interested in the fae, there's some monster in the great woods, or there's some bandits encamped out in the ruined tower. Pick one or two of those, go to book two, and look up that whatever entry is relevant to that. So like, okay, what's going on at the ruined tower? Well, you flip that open and you get the whole story of Stormcatcher and the fall of the tower and what's going, like the blue magpies that are living there. You just kind of flipping through it should hopefully spark more ideas. And one of the things about book two is everything is cross-referenced with each other. So you're going to find things you're like, wait a minute, what's this about? Like the Tempest Lords. Well, let me learn about them. And then you flip back to the Tempest Lord section and you start kind of like skimming that and reading that and getting ideas from that. And you keep following these trails until you kind of like start to process, like, okay, I can take some of that and I can take some of that and I can take some of that. And you start to hopefully see some connections that you can work with. And then you start formulating those. And when you decide on a course of action, you take that and you dive a little bit deeper. Right. So if we are going to go with the ruined tower, let me read up on all of the things that directly attach to it, and then follow the instructions in the creating a site or the creating of the first chapter or the first adventure, and like just start putting it together following the process. And it's gonna take a bit of time and effort the first couple of times, like as you are getting more familiar. But every time you play, every time like somebody asks a question, every time something happens, it just gives you more of a reason to go back to book two, dig in and learn a little bit more and follow a train, follow this thread to something new. And there are times like I still find connections that, like, I wrote the damn thing. I didn't think of it. Like the description of the maw and what's outside of the maw absolutely jives with having a hollow fae inside that sucks the life force out of everything.
Yeah.
But I did not put that in the book. I literally just stumbled onto it because because I was thinking about hollow fae and something near Stonetop. Right. So like there's plenty of connections to be made and found and discovered that aren't even necessarily written into the book or weren't even intentional.
And we've talked about this
I don't know.
before in interviews, but like book two is not meant to be it is not a trad game's rigid understanding of lore in that way. You're
No.
not going to break you're not going to break the vicinity because you added something of your own to that space to make it work, right? Like it's not
Right.
it's not, you don't have to worry about that. It's there as support and resource for you to go have that for you to have that
And
not to punish you.
And there is so much in the world that your players are never going to touch or never going to encounter. And if, you never go to the White Fangs, who cares what you say is up in the White Fangs, right? Like, it doesn't really matter. But if you do go up to the White Fangs, I got you covered, right? Like that is the attitude that the book is trying to convey. And obviously, there's going to be certain pieces that are more likely to come up than others. Everyone's going to have adventures in the Great Wood. Everyone's going to have some experience on the roads, right? You're probably going to encounter some hill folk at some point. But, like, what's going on in the Man March, you don't need to be an expert on that.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if anyone has ever gone to the Dread River in the Stonetop campaign. Right, like I have a whole chapter for it, but I don't know if anyone's ever gone there.
Also, Myred is Shane on the Discord. Just FYI, that's who we've been talking to the whole time.
Howdy, neighbor.
So the two other questions I want to hit on is, and this one came up very early on, but this feels like a good place to have it. So you've got your prep, you've got the book, you've got these things. And this came from somebody very early on, but it's basically like, oh, I'm running the tower, and I realize I have 10 things I have to kind of look back and forth between to keep things in mind. Like, you're using OneNote. Obviously, the book's PDFs are PDFs. People can print things out if they want to, but how do you kind of bounce out, hey, here are 10 different things that I'm pulling from, and keeping all those things kind of in front of you or in mind? Is that kind of what you're like? I mean, you've kind of, I think, answered some of that through the process. That final sheet, here are the beats you're doing. Is that it, or do you have other recommendations on information management?
It depends an awful lot on the type of adventure, the type of scene or whatnot that I'm expecting to come up with. Like if I was going to the Ruined Tower, which we did, right? Like we did a full on. Let's see here. How many sessions? Let's see. The Ruined Tower, we spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sessions exploring the Ruined Tower. And most of those were like the prep for them was a couple of impressions and notes and like maybe like stat blocks pasted on like onto my OneNote page. And then I had a big ass map. Like I full on like made the map of the whole tower, and I just had little like descriptive phrases for what was going into each one of them. And that's because that's how my brain works. I enjoy doing a dungeon crawl. I really benefit from having a visualization, like a firm map of something. Just because then I can like look at something like, okay, yeah, you could see this from here, or you could hear this from around here, or oh, these things would connect this way. So like my brain really wants for a site to have like a visual map, a visual representation of the place. So I made one, and then that was 10 sessions worth of play, basically.
Yes, Luke is fondly remembering those 3 months of their life right now,
right.
And not lamenting the loss of a horse at all. And so,
look, man, you let that thing go. You let it out of its prison.
Awesome. The last one, and this is one we didn't get a chance to go into, but I do think it's a good thing that to touch on in prep is steadying advancements, right? So for our one shot, we also didn't do anything that would advance the steadying. So
no.
That feels like we probably would have had to roll differently at the open to really have a chance to do that, or have found something way cooler down below. Not way cooler, because we found plenty of cool shit down there. Way more helpful down below. So as you're thinking about advancing your studying or how you advance your studying, is there a space in prep where that fits?
I mean, I think it mostly just sort of fits in with the kind of prepping for like during a home front session, or when we are doing some kind of a home front session. There's a distinct possibility that the players are going to want to work on some kind of a home front project of some sort. So like if you look in the Homefront chapter, there's a nice little spread on dealing with downtime. Where'd that go? Come on. Sorry. This is what happens when I try and get my 10-year-old computer to keep up with all the things we're doing
I can
right
send
here.
you my 6-year-old computer that I just
But yeah,
switched
if we,
switched off of. Get you that 4-year bump up.
but I know, Tony, that you decided it didn't do the job.
How many monitors are you trying to run? That's the the thing.
Only two.
Only 2? All right. Well, they
Yeah.
won't do that well. That was part of the problem. So
Uh,
my power supply was just
okay.
getting outpaced.
So downtime, right? Like so once we have the player characters come back from the whatever expedition they're on, there's this period where we play out the return, we play out the kind of immediate scenes that are suggested by their return. Make sure everyone's got some time with their family, and then you kind of shift into okay, we're zooming out, time's going to pass, and then you're going to figure out what people want to get up to. And if this happens at the end of a session, then you're going to kind of get some ideas from people. And then, yes, you're going to do some prep there. And you're going to think about, okay, if people want to work on the studying improvement, I need to make a plan. If they want to, like if they already have a plan and they want to make progress to it, I need to think about, like, how can I make that interesting? Do I want to do it on screen? Do I want to write a love letter for it? Excuse me. So like if people are establishing goals between like at the end of a session and you're going into a stretch of downtime, well just prep for some of that and think about like, okay, well, the next obvious requirements on this studying improvement that they want to work on are this, this, and this. Let me think about a scene or two that might, pertain to that. Or, let me make a plan if we haven't done that yet. Or let me think about what role we would need in order to resolve this. Or just, make a list of GM moves that you might want to make using your NPCs, and then just let the players do what they're going to do and use those moves as the NPCs as a way to react to their roles or to react to their actions. So like there's plenty that you can do as far as prepping for that kind of thing.
Awesome.
But also, and I'm sure since if Luke's still on the line, they can attest to like there would occasionally be sessions where we'd get back from an adventure at the beginning of the session or like midway through the session, we'd do the return home stuff. We might even like roll seasons change mid-session, and then we're like, okay, well, we've got some, this is a peaceful season. What do folks want to work on? And we just we spend a good chunk of time hashing those projects out and kind of establishing the requirements. Maybe there's a trade and barter role. It's just very unfocused play, just kind of figuring out where is the next scene. Yeah. Kind of the equivalent of what is it, idle dreaming and beyond the belonging outside belonging games.
Awesome. What?
But with a little bit of mechanical scaffolding and incentives and structure laid out by the arcana requirements or the improvement requirements that just sort of point you in different directions.
Yeah. Love it. Cool. Last question. This is not prep based at all. In the Discord, it seems like the Seeker, Blessed, and Would-Be Hero are the most popular party. I'm assuming combination. Is that what you've found also?
The Seeker, the Blessed, and the Would-Be Hero.
That's not my read of the Discord, but I feel like the Light Bearer is a lot of people's ride or die. But
I think the Seeker I would agree with. I think the Seeker, almost every party ends up with a Seeker in it because the Seeker directly taps into one of the coolest mechanical widgets of the game, right? The whole stuff of the Arcana. Honestly, everything else it's a grab bag, I would say.
I I do feel like if it's a 3-person party, a lot of what I see is Seeker, one of the god connected characters, and then someone who is not, is a lot of times what I would see. So I see why that would seem like it. But I also know if there had only been 3 players in ours, there probably would have been only people who are up to weird supernatural shit also too. So it's going to depend on your party a lot, I think, also.
Yeah. Yeah, but occasionally you will get like reports of someone being like, "Yeah, we've got a ranger, a fox, and a heavy."
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, "Wow, okay, great. Don't fight spirits."
Yeah.
Right? Or, if you encounter something that you can't physically touch, run.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but I was honestly shocked that no one in your group in the group that you guys played wanted to be a would-be hero, because it
it
I
does seem
assumed
like it would have been our vibe. It does seem
it
like it would have
does.
been our
Yeah.
vibe.
Yep.
I mean, I did say on those sessions, though no one has confirmed this yet, that when we send the second print run out, that we would celebrate by having another series. And holy shit, did we just do that this week? So maybe it's time to start talking about maybe Nathan comes back as a would-be hero. Well, there's only one way to find out. That's to stay tuned. This has been great. You want to stop sharing for a second?
Sure.
Back? Maybe we'll go to the right spot.
Probably should have stopped sharing earlier.
Nope, it flipped us yet again. It loves it. It loves a flip. Can I get us back into position? That works. My head's huge, but yeah, this has been great. If folks haven't watched it yet, like I think it was Luke who said it, like go back after this, watch session 0, session 1, then watch the rest of them also too, of our AP. The annotated actual play is an absolutely great thing to watch also too. I think you'll see a lot of this kind of in action through that also too. But a couple of things, like I said, we're going to be at Gen Con. We're trying to get some games on the schedule. We'll have more details about that coming up. We're kind of at the whim of what they'll give us at this point in time. But we've got all those submitted, along with a few other things. But we will have some meet and greets at the booth for the entire Stonetop team. So if you're going to be there, please let us know and come out and say hi. The best place to find information about that is the Discord, the Stonetop Discord, which, Jeremy, what's that URL?
https://ttrpg.link/Stonetop Discord.
If you want to stay up to date, that is really the best way to do it. The other great way to do it, if you are plugged into the +1 email system. So if you go to the website, there'll be a pop-up that pops up, and you can sign up to get an email and a 5% discount on your order. If you haven't picked up a copy of Stonetop yet, it'll work for that. I do want to shout out again, Holdfast Station is available for print, and if you have pre-ordered a copy if you already ordered Stonetop and want to add a copy, you can reach out to us via email to get that added to your order with no extra shipping cost added on. If you haven't, you can just add it to your order straight from the Stonetop collection page. We're going to have Michael on to run the game sometime in the next month, but I don't know when, because our lives are just shipping things for the next couple of weeks. Other than that, we will be back next Wednesday with the live interview with John Harper to talk about their approach to Forge in the Dark, PBTA, and other narrative game designs in our Show Me Your Moves series that we talked about earlier. And there are other things my brain is telling me that I want to talk about, but I don't remember what they are. Sooth Wardens, thank you. ttrpg.link/Sooth Wardens. If you haven't gone and checked it out yet, again, we're super close to funding. Navarre's an absolutely amazing creator, was one of the first Zine Club creators that we got to work with. Zine Club's a program where we release 2 RPGs every single month by new and emerging creators. The Corrupted, their original game that we released, is also getting a remastered version as part of this Kickstarter also too. But Sooth Wardens is about for a game for 1 GM and 2 players. There are no dice. There's a heart track and a stamina track, and an absolutely amazing stat arrangement system where you pick what stat you are best at, and then you move in a certain pattern, going from kind of okay at, fine at, and shit at. Based on the first stat you pick, it determines the rest of the array, and a couple of other amazing abilities. We've got some really cool stretch goals, but right now we would really just love to get that funded and help unleash that out into the world. It's got slightly less than 2 days left to go over on BackerKit at ttrpg.link/SuzWardens. We've got a bunch of other great things coming up this year. Jeremy, I know we're talking about it, and I won't put you on the spot by saying what. But I know one of the things we've talked about is trying to get one of the, like a one-shot version of Stonetop ready to go for Gen Con also too. And so there'll be other stuff like that that'll be available. Again, Discord's the best place to stay up to date on that. You got any thoughts on what it's going to look like yet? You don't have to have any reality on what it's going to look like yet, though.
I have thoughts. I don't want to say anything out loud yet because I don't want to they're not great thoughts yet.
They're just
there will be pre-gen characters though.
There will be
like
pre-gen characters. We're gonna take it to Luke, get some coaching. We'll see you at Gen Con to playing more. Also, if you have play reports, other stuff like that, feel free. Please toss them into the chat. And then lastly, I'm not gonna show it to you right now, but I'll post it over in the Discord in just a little bit. We got a draft of the art from Lucy. That's the commemorative piece from our actual play thing. They're doing a bigger picture with all of our characters in it. We'll put the sketch quality one in there for people to see after this is over, so y'all can all go ooh and ah at it. And then Lucy's already cranking it out. It's absolutely gorgeous. So super excited about it. Jeremy, if people want to find you outside of the Discord, what's the best place for them to do that?
Outside of the Discord, I guess spoutinglore.blogspot.com. That's about it. I don't have a social media presence outside of those. I guess maybe Reddit. You can try. I might notice you there.
We will, if you're having a cool or horrible conversation about Stonetop, we'll find it on Reddit.
I might. Yeah, we might. I wanted to point out. I just listened to the most recent episode of Thomas Manuel's Rascal Reading Club podcast, and apparently the next and last entry in that series is going to be for this season is going to be Stonetop. So I'm super stoked to be included in that fairly illustrious group of games that they're reading. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So that's the Rascal. If you look up the Rascal Radio Hour podcast, you'll find it as episodes on there.
Yep. Find links to that at rascal.news also too, if you want to check that out. Yeah, this has been great. I don't have a way to end this because it's the first time we've done Stone Talk. If you want us to do more Stone Talk, I guess let us know, and Jeremy and I'll see what time and availability you have. Maybe we get Luke on for some custom coaching for people when they're running it. Bring it to Coach Luke. Get a pep talk. I don't know. Let's wave at the camera until I take us off here. Thanks, Jeremy.